My name is Caroline Poynton, and I am recording this today from YouTube about dangerously King Charles giving warnings over faith.
Outsiders, I'm
science.
going there. I'm talking about
The elephant in the room, King
elephant
Charles.
in the room, because mainstream media won't talk about
Nope.
it. And
no
let's
one
be
else wants to
honest,
talk
a
about
lot
it.
of us are sat at home wondering what on earth is going on. We seem to have a king that is prioritising the Islamic
Islam
ideology,
over
and lo
Christianity.
and behold, if any of us say this, we are all worried that we are going to be deemed far right, racist bigots, white supremacists. This simply isn't true, because it was fine for
King Charles
formerly
to say it.
Prince Charles in 2015 to ask all of the questions we are now wanting to ask, because I'm going to show you this. In 2015, Charles tells UK Muslims to abide by our values. Prince says if you come to live in Britain, you must respect us. Charles denounced the radicalisation of young Britons by Islamic fanatics. He said they should show more respect to the values we hold dear. Comments were made as he started a 6-day tour of the Middle East. He will now tell Saudi king to show clemency to Saudi blogger Raif Badawi. Sentence of 1,000 lashes and 10 years in jail caused international outrage. Prince last night arrived in Jordan, where he will meet King Abdullah II. So this is from 2015, where Prince Charles at the time was allowed to say this. Yet in 2026, we are asking the question, why is the king failing? Failing the population, failing Christians, failing in his role as allegedly the supreme governor of the Church of England. I am bringing a Muslim onto this channel during this show to talk to us about this. I've also brought you Bishop Kai, who is utterly disgusted at the way King Charles is behaving. But nuance is needed with this, because whilst formerly Prince Charles wanted to say this in 2015, he has done nothing but push the Islamic ideology. So let's have a look through everything, shall we? This is an image from his trip that I just referenced, and then we have another image from his trip to Turkey. We've seen very little mainstream pushback, but GB News, I will give them credit where credit's due. King Charles' role called into question over Islamic call to prayer at Windsor Castle, and that was this Islamic prayer where there was backlash, but not really from the mainstream media, because they like to pretend we're all mad conspiracy theorists and this isn't happening.
But it is
so
happening.
this was
really
the
happening.
King Charles event where he hosted the first ever Ramadan Iftar at Windsor Castle in March 2025, where the Islamic call to prayer echoed in St George's Hall for the first time, marking a historic moment of interfaith inclusion as Muslims broke their fast, an event supported by the King's long-standing championing of religious diversity and community cohesion. I mean, that just sounds like something Keir Starmer and Sadiq Khan are saying.
Yeah.
The event was in St George's Hall, and the significance of it was because it was the first time an event was held at the castle, showing the the King's support for diverse faith.
Why?
This is pushing a globalist agenda. Look,
why?
I welcome
he's not
people
meant to be a politician.
Of different faiths, different backgrounds,
involved in all of that.
With that said, there is a problem in the UK. It cannot be denied, and I know many of our friends in the Commonwealth and America feel the same.
Pushing their
We're now in a position in the UK where a large majority of the meat we consume from supermarkets is halal, but they are not disclosing it. And
I don't eat it.
Look, I absolutely support Jewish people that want to eat kosher meat and believe they have to. I support Muslim people who want to eat halal meat and believe they have to. I don't want to eat it though, and I will not be made to be branded a white supremacist for not wanting to eat halal or kosher meat. This is just obvious.
And we're not meant
But
to.
we've got King Charles pushing a political agenda.
Exactly.
That
Why is
has
he
been
pushing everything
for
political?
decades. And
For
so with
decades.
all of this,
And
diversity is our strength. Like Bishop Kai said on this very channel, why is King Charles always using the one time that he can speak directly to the public without interference from the government to push in that diversity speech? He doesn't do it with any other religion.
just for being a Muslim.
We've also got a king that is
why?
Patron of the Islamic Studies Centre in Oxford, and the king says that this is imperative.
Yeah.
The king has also got his own Mosaic Trust as part of the King's Trust, which is bringing together Muslim men and women from across ethnic and theological differences who are holding positions of religious authority for a leadership programme. It says he's helping 21 Muslim faith leaders to broaden understandings and make new connections across ethnic and theological differences. It just sounds like word salad to me, and I am sick to the back teeth of hearing that diversity is our strength. It goes without saying, nothing in my video is ever meant to incite hate. And the reason we have to say this, in case you're watching and going, we know, stop saying it, is because we are living under what many feel is a dictatorship in the UK. And Keir Starmer is trying to ban eggs. He's trying to gaslight any single person that goes against the narrative.
Yeah.
The king's job is to bring calm. It is to bring a sense of belonging for people, but he is also meant to bring stability. There is no stability in the country because if you oppose Sharia law, if you oppose halal meat, if you oppose the very fact that migrants are being brought into this country and paid for by the taxpayer, you are then branded far right wing. Yet I go back to this point. It was fine in 2015 for Charles to tell UK Muslims to abide by our values. And the Prince said, if you come, you live in Britain, you must respect us. So, insiders, I'm bringing Shoaib in. He is a friend of mine. He is a citizen journalist and he is a Muslim. I think there's no better person that we can discuss this area with because this is an area that needs discussing. King Charles has previously pushed the Islamic ideology. He has had the call to prayer in Windsor Castle. This goes against being the defender of the faith, but because it's all wrapped up in charity work and philanthropy and humanitarian work, it makes everyone feel like they can't say anything, that they are all worried to be called racist bigots. You're not a racist bigot for asking questions. That is absolutely fine. And it's particularly fine because, as I've brought the evidence, our now king was asking these questions in 2015. However, he was asking these questions, but then with the other hand, has been funding through the King's Charitable Trust so many initiatives that are promoting and amplifying the Islamic ideology, and he has not done the same for the church. I'm not happy with a little trip to the church in Sandringham by the king. I'm not happy when he uses the Christian Easter message to push other religions. So I'm also bringing you in this episode a very explosive clip where Ben Habib, the leader of Advance, has said that
on our religion, which is the Christian faith.
King Charles is either
I'm not happy that he's not spending. They're taking money away from churches
standing up to his
and
role
families
as
that are Christian families, like me and my sister.
Let me bring in Shoaib.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, if he's sponsoring our life, sponsor me and my little sister.
I think there is no one better to comment
we're going
on
to
this.
Burns Castle.
Let's go.
Tell you what, King
Shoaib,
Charles.
if
See
you
what
could
I mean?
give
The elephant
one
in the room,
warning
King fucking
to
Charles.
King Charles about the fact he has over-amplified the Islamic ideology and he is pushing it to the detriment of Christianity. What would your one message be to him?
Well, I would say if you want to prove people wrong that he's not a Muslim, which is
He's
fine,
a Muslim, thank
but
you.
he should not be promoting Islam the way he is. Because if he says he's a Christian, guess what? He's getting away from his own religion, and he's in a place where he's promoting. He calls himself a Christian, but while he being a Christian, promoting Islam, believe me, there is no Muslim promoting Christianity. You don't go to mosque where they're saying, hey, you know what? Why don't you go for the 25th of December? Because Christmas Day. No, we were told as a Muslim, I got death threats because I went to the Carol singing.
Yeah, and I said he shouldn't be doing it.
In London, where I saw you
In
as
the
well.
first place,
And I had death threats from the Muslim community. They said, "Oh, how dare you do this? Because you're a traitor." Well, I'm a human being. I can do what I feel like doing. It's a free country. And I went there to stand shoulder to shoulder with my Christian brothers and sisters. That's what it was. I want to support them because, like we see with King Charles now, he's supporting the Muslim community. That's fine. But the moment an unknown guy like me come out to show support to the Christian brothers and sisters, well, I get that threat. So what I would say to King Charles, it's a very dangerous game that he's playing. And if these Muslims or anybody Muslim get into power, believe me, it will be long before we know.
Because he's allowed that.
everything is
He's
gone. We
allowed
already
he
know
can't
the
have a
freedom of
knighthood. There we are.
Under King Charles, this country has never been in a worse position. And when Christians say they are not happy about King Charles pushing Islam, we are bullied, and we actually have the mainstream media weaponized against us. Everyone from the king to the government to the media are working against the people on the ground. What do you think it meant to the Islamic ideology when the call to prayer was called in Windsor Castle? It was the first time in history that had ever been done. Did you agree with that as a Muslim?
Not at all. I did not agree with it at all. And you just mentioned that I was arrested because I just told you, I was arrested, and I know you know this very closely because I've given you the ins and out of the detail, which I won't go into it a lot. But for me, seeing this, it seems like a takeover. And the reason why I was arrested for being a racist is because I am a Muslim, and I have said we should not have as many mosques in the UK that we have. It's they shouldn't have it because you see the Muslims, like you see them in this Windsor Castle now. You see them out and about in the middle of the street, blocking the road, and praying.
I said it wasn't.
It shows some sort of authority. And the post that I saw when it came out after we've seen the call to prayer was then in Windsor Castle. All the Muslims were celebrating, and the worst thing is, like I said, I say it's worst thing is, and it's unfortunate because I am from that community, and for me the unfortunate thing is that I don't want to see this. But when I'm seeing this, the problem is that yes, I don't agree with it, but it's the Muslims as well. If you look at them, the way they put out the post, oh yeah, even if you're joking about these things, you shouldn't be. I'm sure you've seen many posts. You got big accounts, more than over 50,000-60,000 people following them, and they're saying things like, oh, we are here to take over, we're not here to live with you guys, we are going to take over. And then people want to talk about Islamophobia. A time when I lived here more than 10 years, I never had an issue with anybody saying anything to me, but now I do have an issue. People look at me and they say, oh, you're a Muslim, we don't want to listen to you, you're a Muslim, you might be lying to us. And I don't blame them at all. This is the problem that is created by the Muslim people because they won't stop. When I seen that in Windsor Castle, I put out a post on my ex and I said, I don't agree with it. This should have never ever have happened because you will not see any people from the churches going into Saudi Arabia, into their biggest mosque in Mecca, right, or in Medina, and say, hey, guess what? We want to make an announcement because it's Christmas Day. They'll be like, no, you cannot do that. Yes, we can. You're allowed to practice, and that is only recently, by the way, before you were not even allowed to practice openly, but you're allowed to practice now, right? And in the UK, they're giving them a full platform. They're like, you know what? Hey, use my house, use the Windsor Castle. You want to do your corporate, they should say no. They should say this is.
Well, it's the biggest stamp of approval, isn't it? You are brought onto royal grounds by the defender of the Church of England, and it's almost like here's free reign. But I guess nuance is so important with this as well because it's not one isolated event or one isolated piece of support from King Charles. He is also patron of the Islamic Centre in Oxford. There's a wing named after him. So again, it's not just this call to prayer. It's all of this added up. And the fact that he's got the Mosaic Trust, which is amplifying
rape
faith
survivors,
leaders
does it?
within the Islamic community. It just
From the
doesn't
Pakistani
seem
grooming gang, does
like
it?
the Islamic
From all that side.
ideology is compatible
Wonder why?
with
'Cause he's
Western
fucking,
values.
he's
And
changed his
I
religion
think
as
that's
a
very
fucking
different from
pedo like the
being
rest of them.
a Muslim
That's
as
why I
well,
said
isn't
he's
it?
not
Can you
English, he's
explain
German.
how
They can get back to
warped
Germany.
the narrative is
welcome
that
in
King
England.
Charles is pushing?
Well, you know what? I'm not gonna lie. I feel like this is a very dangerous thing that King Charles is doing right now because
So do
I
I.
never lived in Pakistan. I lived in Saudi Arabia. That's where I grew up, and my parents are still in Saudi Arabia. The good thing that we see now in Saudi Arabia that they have taken out the ideology, the religion out of politics, and that's why since 2018 you can see Saudi Arabia has been amazing. But before 2018, the things that we have seen, the things that we have witnessed, I'm sure a lot of people have heard about it. The thing, obviously I won't go into it, but they're not very nice things. So what I'm seeing now, when you see places like Dubai, when you see places like Saudi Arabia, they're taking the religion out of the politics, and the country that people like us used to look up to when we had problems in our country, when we used to look up to England, when we used to look up to United Kingdom, for us it was like that was hope. And I know there are a lot of people in Pakistan. We remember the prime minister of Pakistan previously, Imran Khan, who was a cricketer as well, who was also married to Jamal Smith. Every time he used to give examples to new generation when we were growing up, we used to see his interview and he said, "Oh, if you want to be an amazing human being, you be like the British people." Like that was the example that I grew up with. You want to be a good human being. I was never told you be like this Muslim or that. No, we were told you need to be like the British people because they put humanity before everything else. We were told that if you want to have the best police, you need to look at Scotland Yard. But now what I'm looking at right now, the UK is actually going backwards. Obviously, it's heartbreaking for me to see because I came to this country with a lot of hopes, and believe it or not, this country has given me everything. And I'm so grateful, and it breaks my heart to say it because I know you can criticize. This is your country. I'm a guest in this country. For me to even think about, oh, you know what's going on, it breaks my heart because I never thought that I'd be in a position as an immigrant, as a guest into your country, that I will say, oh, you know what, actually, I think this is wrong. But unfortunately, because it is something that has been used, a religion that I come from, and I know how this religion can be manipulated. We have seen in Pakistan, and I'm sorry to say this, but if King Charles is pushing Islam that much, the Christian people of the UK, the British Christian people, or any other Christian people living in the UK, they will be in trouble because Islam, like you said, is not compatible with anything. It's either you follow the Islam or you don't follow the Islam. Which one is it?
Now, to get a different perspective, I am bringing in an exclusive clip of the interview I did with Ben Habib, the leader of political party Advance UK. He speaks about King Charles being a globalist, or potentially he is oblivious to what's going on. Take a look at this. You decide. I have a lot of royal followers, and the mood on the ground regarding King Charles's Christmas speech was people felt very let down then. I spoke to Bishop Kai about this as well, and Bishop Kai said this speech from King Charles was very much a political speech. What did you make of it?
Well, I was disappointed. The last thing the British people want to hear is the need for diversity, the benefits of diversity. Every day we are seeing how the so-called multiculturalism and diversity is setting our country aside. It's the existential threat to which I referred when I was talking about our constitution and culture being, at the moment, frankly, more important than the economy, even though the economy is always important. Clearly, we can't be settled in our own lives if the economy is going down the pan. But there's something much more precious than the economy, and it is who we are as a people. Our Christian constitution, our Christian heritage, our culture, our understanding of how we got to where we are. That is being introduced. Our whole belief system is being attacked. And so when you get the King of England, the King of the United Kingdom, getting up on Christmas Day, which is clearly a Christian festival, one of remembering the birth of Christ, which means different things to different people, but all of it is Christian and good, getting up and talking about diversity, hinting at multi-faith country, it's not what we want or what we need. And one of the things Advance stands for, as I'm sure you know, Lauren, is the reinstitution of our Christian constitution, as distinct from our culture. Of course, we've got to be culturally Christian, but it's much more fundamental than that. We are essentially Christian from a constitutional perspective, which is why the King of England is the head of the church, which is why the bishoprics sit in the House of Lords. The Parliament, before the Supreme Court was created, was the centre of all power in this country. The power to make law, the power to ultimately adjudicate law, and the power of the church. It was all represented in Parliament. And slowly, since Tony Blair, perhaps not since Tony, they're removing our constitutional roots. That is where the real threat is coming. And that's where we've got to go back to where we were. There has to be, before we can advance, there has to be a restoration of the United Kingdom.
Yeah. And do you think King Charles is a globalist? Because it does look to me that he seems to be pushing a globalist agenda, and that, you know, we're told all the time he can't be political. Looks very political to me every time he does something.
Looks very political to me as well.
Yeah, so when I talk about King Charles, I just like to differentiate between his office and him as a person. I still am a monarchist. I still believe that we have a titular monarchy that is important and part of the fabric, just as our Christian constitution should be a part of our fabric. So should the monarchy. But the individual that is Charles is either supremely unintelligent or is a globalist, or both. But he absolutely bangs the drum of multiculturalism. He bangs the drum of net zero to great damage of this country. And by the way, the damage from net zero is not just economic.
Why do you not bang on about all these things that are going to damage England?
It is deep, which I can elucidate if you wish.
Come on, it don't make sense.
The agendas being followed by Charles the individual are not good for this country. They don't put this country first.
If you value these full narrative, nuanced conversations coming directly to your inbox, please hit that subscribe button and continue to support my independent journalism.
King fucking Charles. I'm changing his flipping religion because I've been knowing it for time. It's amazing how much I've known about him changing his religion all this time, and I knew I'd been right. I knew I had to be right.
In less than 72 hours, the United States military captured a sitting head of state, extracted him from his own presidential palace, flew him to New York, and had him standing in a federal courtroom pleading not guilty, all while you were going about your weekend. That's not a movie plot. That happened last Saturday, and nobody's talking about what it actually means. If you think what happened in Venezuela doesn't affect you personally, if you think this is just foreign policy, just politics, just another headline you can scroll past, you're about to find out how wrong that assumption is. Because this isn't about Venezuela. This is about the $100 billion that's about to change hands. This is about 303 billion barrels of oil. This is about a pattern that has been repeating for over a century. And it's about to reshape everything from the gas prices you pay to the value of your savings to the global order your retirement is built on. While you were watching football, while you were at brunch, while you were scrolling through your phone, U.S. forces executed the most significant military operation on the American continent since the Panama invasion in 1989. They didn't announce it in advance. There was no congressional debate, no UN resolution, no declaration of war, just a weekend operation that ended with a sitting president in handcuffs on American soil. And by Tuesday, that same president's country was agreeing to hand over 15 million barrels of oil, with more coming indefinitely, quietly, systematically, without the headlines you'd expect. This isn't conspiracy theory. This isn't speculation. These are direct quotes from the president's own Truth Social posts, federal indictments unsealed by the Attorney General, CNBC reporting on oil shipments, White House officials on the record. I'll show you every source. Check them yourself. By the end of this video, you'll understand three things. First, the exact pattern that predicted this intervention years in advance and why it was always going to end this way. Second, what comes next for Venezuela, for oil prices, and for every other resource-rich nation watching right now. And third, what this means for your money, your investments, and your understanding of how the world actually works. Because here's what nobody's explaining. What happened in Venezuela isn't new, it's not unprecedented, it's not even surprising if you know where to look. This exact playbook has been executed before. Iraq, 2003. Libya, 2011. Iran, 1953. Guatemala, 1954. Same justification structure, same economic preconditions, same outcome. Regime demonization, economic isolation, military intervention, resource extraction, 4 stages, same sequence, every single time. You can either see the pattern, understand what it means for the next decade of global politics and your financial future, or you can miss the signs like millions did before Iraq, before Libya, before every resource intervention of the last century. They were shocked too, every time. Give me 18 minutes, that's all I'm asking. Because what you're about to learn will change how you see every geopolitical headline for the rest of your life. Let's go. Right now, the global oil market trades approximately 100 million barrels per day. That's $7 billion in transactions. Every 24 hours, the US dollar serves as the settlement currency for roughly 80% of those transactions. That's according to the Bank for International Settlements. Not a blog, not a podcast, the central bank of central banks. This petrodollar system has been the backbone of American economic dominance since 1974. 50 years of global trade flowing through US currency. 50 years of guaranteed demand for dollars, regardless of what the Federal Reserve prints. It's the largest, longest-running monetary arrangement in modern history. And Venezuela? Venezuela sits on 303 billion barrels of proven crude oil reserves. That's the largest in the world. Larger than Saudi Arabia, larger than Iran, larger than Russia. 17% of all known oil on Earth, sitting in one country, in America's backyard. But here's the thing, they're only producing 800,000 barrels a day, less than 1% of global output, a fraction of what they should be producing. Why? Because for the last decade, that oil has been locked out of the global market, sanctioned, isolated, waiting. Here's what nobody's telling you. The Venezuela intervention wasn't a response to drug trafficking. It wasn't about freeing political prisoners. It wasn't about democracy. Those are the stated reasons, the official justifications. But if you follow the money, if you track the pattern, you'll see something else entirely. This exact scenario has played out before. Not once, not twice. At least 6 documented times in the last 70 years where the United States has intervened, directly or through proxies, in resource-rich nations following the same precise sequence. Every single time, the intervention came within 24, 36 months of that nation threatening the petrodollar system or nationalizing energy resources. Every single time, the stated justification was humanitarian, democratic, or security related. Every single time, the outcome was regime change, followed by resource agreements with Western companies. The sequence isn't similar, it's identical. Stage 1, economic isolation. Stage 2, demonization. Stage 3, intervention. Stage 4, extraction. Mathematical, predictable. And once stage 3 begins, once military forces are deployed, the outcome has never been reversed, not once in modern history. Let me show you exactly how it works. I call this the resource intervention cycle. 4 stages, always in the same order, always with the same outcome. Stage 1, isolation. This is where it starts. A resource-rich nation does something that threatens the established order. They nationalize oil fields, they demand payment in currencies other than dollars. They align with rivals. The response is immediate. Sanctions, financial isolation, frozen assets, trade restrictions. The goal isn't to change behavior. The goal is to weaken, to create economic pressure that makes the population suffer, to build the preconditions for what comes next. The stage typically lasts 3 to 8 years. During this time, the target nation is slowly strangled. Their infrastructure decays. Their economy contracts. Their ability to resist diminishes. No one worries yet because it's just diplomacy, just pressure, just consequences for bad behavior. Stage 2, demonization. Once economic pressure is established, the narrative shifts. The leader becomes the story, not the sanctions, not the economic warfare. The leader, they're called a dictator, a drug trafficker, a human rights abuser, a threat to their own people. Media coverage intensifies. Intelligence reports are leaked. Indictments are unsealed. Every action by the target nation is framed as further evidence of their illegitimacy. This stage overlaps with stage 1, but accelerates in the 12-18 months before intervention. The public is being prepared. The justification is being built. By the end of stage 2, most people have forgotten the original sin, the economic isolation. They only see the monster that was created by it. Stage 3, intervention. This is the pivot point, the moment of action. It can come as an invasion, an airstrike, a special operation, or a weekend extraction mission. The specifics vary. The outcome doesn't. The target leadership is removed, either captured, killed, or forced to flee. A new authority is installed, sometimes called interim, sometimes called transitional, always aligned with intervention interests. Stage 3 is fast, days or weeks. It has to be before domestic opposition can organize. During this stage, the public is told the hard part is over. The dictator is gone. Democracy will follow. Stage 4, extraction. This is what it was always about. Resource agreements are signed. Western companies return. Oil flows. Billions in investment are announced. The country will be rebuilt. The people will benefit. The money is controlled by the intervening power to ensure it's used properly. If this sounds familiar, it is because President Trump said exactly this on Tuesday. That money will be controlled by me as President of the United States of America to ensure it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the United States. Stage 4 lasts indefinitely. The extraction continues until the resources are depleted or the cycle starts again. Let's verify this pattern. 3 examples, all documented, all following the same sequence. Example 1, Iran, 1953. 71 years ago, Iran was the largest oil producer in the Middle East. The Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, later known as BP, controlled the oil fields. British wealth flowed from Persian petroleum. Then, in 1951, Iran's democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh did the unthinkable. He nationalized the oil. Within months, Britain imposed a complete embargo on Iranian oil. Banks froze assets. Ships were turned away. Iran's economy began to suffocate. Stage 1, complete. Mossadegh was reframed. No longer a democratic reformer, now a communist threat, a Soviet ally, a danger to the free world. Time magazine named him Man of the Year in 1951, not as an honor, but as a warning. The coverage turned hostile. The narrative shifted. CIA documents declassified in 2013 confirm the demonization was coordinated. Operation Teep Ajax was designed not just to remove Mossadegh, but to justify his removal. Stage 2, verified. On August 19th, 1953, a CIA-orchestrated coup removed Mossadegh from power. It took 3 days. He was tried and imprisoned. The Shah was reinstated. He would rule for 26 more years with American backing until the 1979 revolution. Stage 3, documented. Within months, a new oil consortium was established.
Oh, but did they remove everybody?
Fair question. The CIA stage 1953, a CIA-orchestrated coup removed Mossadegh.
Oh yeah.
Now a communist threat, a Soviet ally, a danger to the free world. Time magazine named him Man of the Year in 1951, not as an honor, but as a warning. The coverage turned hostile. The narrative shifted. CIA documents declassified in 2013 confirm the demonization was coordinated. Operation Teep Ajax was designed not just to remove Mossadegh, but to justify his removal. Stage 2, verified. On August 19th, 1953, a CIA-orchestrated coup removed Mossadegh from power. It took 3 days. He was arrested, tried, and imprisoned. The Shah was reinstated. He would rule for 26 more years with American backing until the 1979 revolution. Stage 3, documented. Within months, a new oil consortium was established. American companies, previously absent from Iran, received 40% of the new arrangement. British interests retained their share. The oil flowed again. But now it flowed through approved channels. The pattern held. Stage 4, complete. I know some of you were thinking, that was 70 years ago, different era, different rules. Fair question. The CIA formally acknowledged its role in the Iran coup in 2013. Declassified documents, official history. The State Department's historical archives have the full record. This isn't revisionist history. This is admitted fact. Check it yourself. Example 2, Iraq, 2003, Iraq, 2002. Saddam Hussein had ruled for over 2 decades. Iraq sat on 115 billion barrels of proven reserves, 5th largest in the world. And Hussein had made a critical mistake. In November 2000, he announced that Iraqi oil would be sold in euros, not dollars. The first major oil producer to challenge the petrodollar since its creation. Sanctions were already in place from the Gulf War, but they intensified. The Oil for Food program controlled every barrel. Iraq's economy was strangled. Stage 1, already in progress. The narrative accelerated after September 11th, 2001. Hussein became linked to terrorism, despite no evidence of operational connections to Al-Qaeda. The focus shifted to weapons of mass destruction. Intelligence was fixed around the policy. That's the exact phrase from the British Downing Street memo, later leaked. Colin Powell presented aluminum tubes and satellite photos to the UN. The case was built. The public was prepared. By February 2003, millions protested worldwide. It didn't matter. The demonization had worked where it needed to work, in the halls of power. Stage 2, check. March 19th, 2003. Operation Iraqi Freedom began. Baghdad fell in 3 weeks. Hussein fled. He was captured 9 months later, hiding in a hole. The world's 5th largest oil reserves changed hands without a shot being fired at the oil fields themselves. Those were secured on day 1. Stage 3, complete. One of the first acts of the Coalition Provisional Authority, switch Iraqi oil sales back to dollars. The Euro experiment ended immediately. Then came the contracts. ExxonMobil, BP, Shell, Chevron. The same companies that had been locked out returned. Production eventually doubled. By 2023, Iraq was producing 4.5 million barrels per day. The pattern held. But here's what most people forget. The weapons of mass destruction were never found. The stated justification evaporated. The oil didn't. Example 3, Libya, 2011. Muammar Gaddafi ruled Libya for 42 years. Love him or hate him, he had transformed the country into Africa's wealthiest nation by per capita GDP, free healthcare, free education, subsidized housing, all funded by oil. And then Gaddafi made his move. In 2009, he proposed the creation of a unified African currency, the gold dinar. He wanted African nations to demand payment for oil and resources in gold, not dollars. He had 143 tons of gold in Libyan vaults, ready to back it. Libya had been partially rehabilitated from earlier sanctions. Gaddafi had given up his nuclear program in 2003. He was welcomed at the UN. But the gold dinar proposal changed everything. Financial isolation began again, quietly. In early 2011, amid the Arab Spring protests, the narrative shifted rapidly. Gaddafi was going to massacre his own people. Civilians needed protection. Intervention was humanitarian necessity. The UN authorized a no-fly zone, nothing more. NATO expanded that mandate within days. The media showed rebels as freedom fighters, Gaddafi as a madman threatening genocide. Stage 2 accelerated. NATO flew over 26,000 sorties. The no-fly zone became a bombing campaign. In October 2011, Gaddafi was captured by rebels and killed on camera in the street. Hillary Clinton, then Secretary of State, responded on television, "We came, we saw, he died." She laughed. Stage 3, complete. The gold dinar died with Gaddafi. The 143 tons of gold vanished, still unaccounted for according to UN reports. Libya's oil production collapsed in the chaos, then slowly recovered under new arrangements. The country remains fractured, fought over by competing factions, all backed by different foreign powers. But the petrodollar challenge, eliminated permanently. Stage 4, ongoing. 3 examples, 3 decades apart, 3 different continents. Same sequence, same justifications, same outcome. Iran, nationalization, demonization, coup, extraction. Iraq, petrodollar challenge, demonization, invasion, extraction. Libya, gold dinar, demonization, bombing campaign, extraction. The pattern is documented, the pattern is verifiable, and the pattern just repeated in Venezuela. Let's map precisely. Venezuela's relationship with the United States began deteriorating in 1999 when Hugo Chavez took power and started nationalizing oil resources. But the pattern truly activated in March 2015 when President Obama signed an executive order declaring Venezuela a national security threat. That was the trigger. Stage 1 officially began. What followed was the most comprehensive sanctions regime ever applied to a Latin American country. 2017, financial sanctions blocking access to U.S. debt markets. 2018, restrictions on gold trading. 2019, full oil embargo, seizure of Citgo assets, individual sanctions on government officials. 2020, secondary sanctions on any company doing business with Venezuela. For 9 years, Venezuela was slowly strangled. Their oil production collapsed from 2.3 million barrels per day to 800,000. An economy 80% dependent on oil revenues contracted by 75%. Hyperinflation, food shortages, mass immigration. The conditions were created. Stage 1, complete.
Same as
the demonization of Maduro intensified in parallel. Drug trafficker, dictator, human rights abuser, election rigger. In March 2020, the Department of Justice issued criminal indictments for narco-terrorism, $15 million bounty on his head, same treatment as Osama bin Laden. The comparison wasn't subtle. Media coverage focused relentlessly on Venezuelan suffering, caused largely by sanctions, while blaming it entirely on Maduro's governance. In 2019, the U.S. recognized an opposition leader, Juan Guaido, as the legitimate president. He controlled no territory, commanded no forces, but was received at the White House. The message was clear. Maduro is not a leader. He is a criminal occupying a position we don't recognize. Stage 2, check. Then came last weekend, January 2025. U.S. forces conducted what the president called an attack, his word, on Venezuela. In a single operation, they captured the sitting president, his wife, and extracted them to U.S. soil. No congressional authorization, no declaration of war, no UN mandate. Just a fait accompli presented to the world on Sunday morning. By Monday, Maduro was in a New York courtroom claiming he'd been kidnapped and was a prisoner of war. The judge disagreed. Stage 3, complete. And now Stage 4 unfolds in real time. On Tuesday, just 3 days after the capture, Trump announced that Venezuela would provide 30 to 50 million barrels of oil to the United States. The money, he said, would be controlled by me to ensure it benefits both countries. On Friday, he announced $100 billion in investment from Big Oil. He's meeting with Chevron, ExxonMobil, and ConocoPhillips at the White House. Sources told CNBC that oil shipments will continue indefinitely. Venezuela is releasing political prisoners, cooperating on rebuilding energy infrastructure. The second wave of attacks has been canceled because it's no longer needed. 303 billion barrels of oil, the largest reserves on Earth, are returning to the global market under American control. Stage 4, in progress. Now let me tell you what happens next, based on the pattern, based on history, based on what we've seen in Iran, Iraq, Libya, and every other resource intervention. Venezuela will be rebuilt, but not overnight. Gradually, then suddenly. First, sanctions will be selectively rolled back. That's the exact language from White House sources. This means U.S. companies get access, others might not. The $100 billion in announced investment will flow primarily into infrastructure that benefits extraction, pipelines, refineries, export terminals. Venezuelan production will increase from 800,000 barrels to potentially 304 million barrels per day within 5 to 7 years. This additional supply will impact global oil prices. More supply means lower prices, potentially significantly lower. That's good for American consumers at the pump. It's catastrophic for Russia, whose economy depends on high oil prices. For Iran, for other sanctioned producers who can't match the production increase. Watch what other nations do in response. OPEC is already fractured. Venezuela was a founding member. Now it's effectively under U.S. influence. Saudi Arabia will have to choose how to respond to a potential price war. They've been coordinating production cuts with Russia. That coordination becomes much harder when a major producer is back online and motivated to maximize output. The petrodollar system, meanwhile, gets reinforced, not weakened. Any nation watching Venezuela right now understands the message. Challenge the dollar's dominance in energy markets, and you're on the list. But here's what could accelerate Stage 4 beyond anyone's predictions. If the Trump administration successfully demonstrates that resource intervention works, that you can capture a president on Saturday, control their oil by Tuesday, and face minimal international consequences by Friday, the playbook is validated. Other nations with large resources and antagonistic relationships should be paying very close attention. Cuba is 90 miles from Florida. Nicaragua is in the same hemisphere. And then there's the question of what happens if Iran, still on the indictment list, still sanctioned, still holding massive oil reserves, becomes the next focus. The potential consequences cascade outward. Energy prices become more volatile, dependent on intervention success, not just market fundamentals. The dollar strengthens as the petrodollar system is enforced, not challenged. Emerging market nations holding dollar debt face increasing pressure. Global alliances realign based on who accepts the new rules and who resists. This isn't speculation. This is the pattern. It's unfolded the same way every time. The only question is speed. I know what some of you are thinking. But Maduro was actually bad. He was a drug trafficker. He did rig elections. He did abuse human rights. This intervention was justified. Fair enough. Let's address that directly. Was Mossadegh in Iran a bad actor? He was a democratically elected reformer who wanted his country's oil to benefit his country's people. We overthrew him and installed a brutal dictator. Was Saddam Hussein bad? Absolutely. He was a murderous authoritarian. We sold him weapons in the 1980s. We supported him against Iran. He only became Hitler reincarnated when he threatened the petrodollar. Was Gaddafi bad? He was an eccentric dictator who crushed dissent. He also built the most prosperous nation in Africa and was welcomed at the UN after giving up his nuclear program. He became a monster again only when he proposed the gold dinar. Here's the pattern within the pattern. The morality of the leader is irrelevant to the intervention decision. It's only relevant to the intervention justification. Bad actors who support U.S. interests remain allies. Saudi Arabia, the current day. Bad actors who challenge U.S. interests become targets. Good actors who challenge U.S. interests, they become bad actors. I'm not defending Maduro. I'm not defending any of these leaders. I'm pointing out that the moral argument is applied selectively. And if you think moral arguments drive foreign policy, you're not paying attention to the pattern. But America is doing this for strategic reasons, competing with China for resources, securing energy independence, strengthening our position. That's not an objection. That's a description. Yes, that's exactly what's happening. The question isn't whether it's strategic. The question is whether you understand the implications. When resource control becomes explicit foreign policy, when the president says on television that he will control another nation's oil revenue, the pretense is dropped. Other nations adjust accordingly. Alliances shift, trust erodes. The rules-based international order, whatever remained of it, becomes openly transactional. That has consequences for every asset you own, every assumption about stability you built your life around. The pattern doesn't care about justifications. It doesn't care if Maduro was good or bad, if the intervention was legal or illegal, if you support it or oppose it. The pattern is about resources, power, and what happens when they realign. It unfolds like gravity. Your opinion of gravity doesn't stop you from falling. So what does this mean for you practically, specifically, starting today? First, understand that energy volatility is increasing, not decreasing. Venezuela coming back online means 3 to 4 million additional barrels per day within a decade. That's massive downward pressure on oil prices, eventually. But in the short term, production takes years to ramp up. Infrastructure is destroyed. Workers have fled. The transition period will be volatile. Oil prices could spike on instability and crash on oversupply. If you have significant exposure to energy stocks, understand what you own. Are they high-cost producers who need $70 oil to break even, or low-cost producers who profit at $40? This distinction matters enormously in a volatile supply environment. Second, the dollar is being reinforced, not replaced. Every financial commentator telling you the petrodollar is dying needs to explain how that squares with the United States, literally capturing a president to secure oil deals in dollars. The dollar's dominance isn't based on goodwill. It's based on enforcement. Venezuela is a demonstration, not an exception. For your portfolio, this means dollar-denominated assets remain the core. Don't flee to alternatives based on dollar collapse narratives that ignore how vigorously that dominance is being maintained. Third, watch for secondary effects. Russia's economy depends on high oil prices. So does Iran's, so does Nigeria's, so does Angola's. If Venezuela production adds 2 to 3 million barrels per day to global supply over the next 5 years, these countries face severe budget pressure. That creates instability, political risk, currency risk. If you have emerging market exposure, check where it's concentrated. Countries dependent on oil exports face a different future than countries that import oil. Fourth, pay attention to the next target. The Venezuela intervention was executed with minimal resistance and maximum speed. That success makes the playbook more likely to be used again. Watch the rhetoric around Cuba, Nicaragua, Iran. If you see the same pattern, escalating sanctions, intensifying demonization, indictments, the sequence may be in motion. Position accordingly. Don't be surprised by stage 3 when stages 1 and 2 are unfolding in plain sight. Fifth, build your information advantage. What you learned in this video, the 4-stage pattern, the historical precedents, the resource motivation beneath the stated justifications, most people don't understand. They react to headlines. They're surprised when intervention happens. They don't see the preparation. Well, you now have a framework. Use it. When the next crisis unfolds, you'll recognize it for what it is. You'll know where the sequence events are occurring. You'll understand what comes next. That knowledge is worth more than any specific trade recommendation. Sixth, reduce concentration risk. The Venezuela situation unfolded in 72 hours. Maduro went from president to prisoner in a weekend. If you have significant assets concentrated in any jurisdiction that might face similar pressure, if you depend entirely on one country's stability, one currency's value, one market's openness, consider diversification. Not panic, not fleeing. Diversification, geographic, asset class, currency. The world just demonstrated that change can happen faster than markets can price it. Seventh, control what you can control. You can't control whether the US intervenes in Iran next. You can't control oil prices. You can't control the Federal Reserve or the petrodollar system. But you can control your own financial resilience. Emergency fund. Do you have one? Debt levels? Are they manageable if volatility hits your income? Flexibility. Can you adjust if the world changes faster than expected? These basics matter more than clever predictions. If you found this breakdown valuable, if this framework changed how you see geopolitics and your financial future, subscribe to this channel. The people who navigate what's coming successfully are the ones who see patterns before they complete, who understand what stage we're in, who don't get surprised by headlines. That's what this channel delivers. The next video will break down exactly what 100 billion of oil infrastructure investment actually means, where the money goes, who profits, and what the historical track record shows for countries after resource interventions. Because Iraq, Libya, and Iran all had reconstruction promises too. The pattern didn't stop at stage 4, there's a stage 5. And you need to understand it before the Venezuela situation fully unfolds. This isn't doom and gloom, This is pattern recognition. 150 years of documented resource history, every major power transition, every major intervention. The sequence doesn't change, only the location. Right now, Venezuela's oil is being redirected to US markets. $100 billion in investment is being announced. A captured president is sitting in a New York jail. The world's largest oil reserves just changed hands, and most people still think this was about drug trafficking. They're reacting to the justification. You now see the pattern. We're in stage 4, extraction. The rebuilding has begun, the money is flowing, the oil will follow. But stage 4 has consequences that ripple for decades. What happens in Venezuela over the next 12 months will set precedents for the next 12 years. For energy markets, for dollar dominance, for international law. You can either understand those precedents now and position accordingly, or be surprised by them later. The pattern doesn't wait. Drop a comment below. Tell me, what do you think comes next? Do you see another intervention on the horizon? What questions do you have about the resource pattern? I read every single comment. The best ones shape.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Don't know about that.
Net zero immigration is the phrase more and more British people are using because, rightfully, they're sick to death of mass migration and the devastating impact it's had on our country.
One nation experiment in open borders.
Well, since the mass migration experiment began in the early 2000s, net migration has added nearly 10 million people to Britain, creating housing pressure equivalent to the building of around 9 cities the size of Birmingham. And you'd think our great leaders would build enough houses for that. Nope. Instead, we've crammed millions more people into existing cities, rocketing rents to insane levels, undercutting wages with cheap foreign labour, and hammering the working classes. In London, foreign-born residents occupy around 48% of social housing supply that should prioritise and be given to British people who were born and raised here. That's quite simple in my opinion, I don't know what you think. And since 2008, real GDP per capita has grown at a pathetic 0.7% a year, down from 2.5% pre-crisis, leaving us barely ahead of 2008 and 29% below trend. That's roughly, to put it in perspective, £16,500 less per person. And then you factor in soaring inflation and taxes, and what 100 grand today buys you is what £60,000 did before the crash. That is shocking. And services are also at a breaking point, as you all know. NHS dentistry access has collapsed, with 20% less people seeing a dentist in 2-year periods compared to the early 2010s. Hospital waiting lists hit 7.4 million. That's over 200% more than the 2010s' 2.4 million. Rents have surged unprecedentedly. Independent modelling shows that net migration has, since 2001, added roughly £130 plus a month to rents for people across England and over £200 a month in London alone. That's money taken straight out of working class people's pockets, your pockets, crippling young families, and the best people can say to them is cut back on your coffee and Netflix. We need to cut back on our addiction to mass migration. That's the solution. And crime has also spiked. Record sexual offences and violent incidents have risen sharply in sustained urban communities. When you flood the population with people from alien cultures, you overload policing and services. Is it any wonder why social cohesion frays and safety plummets? This is the result of nearly 3 decades of idiotic governance. Labour and Tory alike imported millions upon millions into the country, many wages suppressed as a result of it, and of course there's been a failure to build enough homes for literally anybody. Hospitals and prisons also failed to be built, and a slashing of police numbers, all while they've inflated the population. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what's going to happen, does it? And they've all done this to chase headline GDP growth by inflating the population, so it looks like Britain's doing well, while actually we're all getting poorer. This is a devastating globalist agenda that has changed communities beyond recognition. It sparked cultural clashes, left us less safe, priced young British people out of homes and futures, undercut their jobs, and pay with cheap
King Charles will be happy with himself.
Well, some foreigners also land in Britain, claim benefits, get a free social house, and don't contribute nothing.
Take our tax
It is a
to do
slap in the face. And to be quite honest,
with the
I'd rather
government.
be materially poorer and have my country back than be a few quid richer every year at this point. I want a country that has a shared singular culture, one with trust and opportunity attached to it. It's not impossible. Just look at Poland. They've barely had any immigration, and they're set to overtake our actual GDP figures by 2030. Net zero migration would be a start to bring some balance to the madness.